Hello, everybody. Welcome to one more session. In this particular session, we will look into user account management. That means basically how to create accounts or how to create users, how to delete users, how to create groups, how to delete groups, and how to modify the users that we have created. Now, if we see, we have the commands here which we can see. These commands will help us to either create or modify or delete the groups that we have created. First, we have a syntax called as add user. With the help of add user, we can create users. We know that there's a root user, but if we want, everybody cannot use a root user account, right? If we want to create one user per every person, we have to create users on the Linux system. Like Windows, we create users, right? If there are four people in our home, if four people has to access our laptop, we can create one username and password for one person. Similarly, on Linux, we can do that by using a command called as add user. Now, once we create a user, if at all we want to delete the user, we have a syntax called as user delete or user del. By using this syntax, we can remove the user. Okay, there's a error there. It is user, user and del. Now let's say I have multiple people or multiple teams accessing my system. Now I want to give different permissions to different teams. Then what I can do, I can group the users. To group the users, we have to create something called as a group. Okay. And for that, the syntax would be a group del or group add. Now, if you want to remove a group or delete a group, it is a group del. Now, once we create something, if at all we want to modify the user permissions, username, password, anything, we have to modify that. For that, we can use a syntax called as user modify. Okay. These are the five basic commands that we can use to do the user account management. Now, let us say we created a user by using add user. Now, where that information is stored, or let's say I created a group where that information is stored. Whenever we use these five commands, there are three files which will modify, create, or update. Those files are etc password. It is not password. The file name is passwd. So whenever we create a user, that information would be updated in this particular file. We know that all the configuration files are stored under /etc, right? This is where it is stored. Now, if I give a password, the password will be basically encrypted. And you can see that in etc shadow. We will see these files and we'll understand. And if you create a group, that particular group information is stored in a file called as /etc group. So these three files, shadow, group, and PSSWD, is stored under one of the default folders called as /etc. All right. Now let me go ahead and show my Linux screen and let us run these commands and create users, delete users, create groups, delete groups, and we'll go into this etc password file and the shadow file and observe what we have learned. Now I am on my terminal. Okay. Now let us see what is the location where I'm there in this file system. To see that, I can use pwd. So I'm there in a folder called as /home/ubuntu. Now if I want to see the user, if I see who am I can see the name of user who has logged in. Let us change to root. To change to root user from normal user, we can use the syntax sudo su. That means switch user to root. Now let me type in who am I. So who am I is the syntax that is used to see as which user you have logged in currently. Okay. Now let's say cd slash, and to see which folder now we are there in pwd. Now we say we are there in a root folder. Now if I create a user, for that user one home directory will be created. Okay. Now there is a user called as ubuntu, right? Let the home directory where it will create, it will create in a folder called as slash home. Let us go into that folder, cd home, enter, and ls. Now if you see, these are the 1, 2, 3 folders which are there. Okay. Now let us create another user. What is the syntax to create user? Add user and the username. Let's say the username, I'll give it as Ironman, and enter. Now it is asking what should be the password for this user. Okay, I gave a password, retype the password, enter, full name, some basic details about the user. If you want, we can skip also. Enter. Is this information correct? Yes. Okay, now there's a user by name Ironman is created. Now I'm there in the slash folder home, right? Now let us do ls. Now if you see, there is another folder created by name Ironman. So this folder is the home folder for the user Ironman. That means if we create, Ironman creates any files, folders, everything by default, it will be stored under this particular folder. So every user on Linux will have one default folder. When the user is created, that folder is created. Okay. Let us create one more user and check. Okay. I want to create add user is the syntax to create username Ironman2. Okay. It is asking for password. Let's say I want to skip password. Okay. It is not allowing me to skip the password. You see, I have to give password for sure. I have given my password. Rest all things I will skip. Information is correct. And if I do ls, you see Ironman2 is created. Now, how will I come to know whether this user is created or not? Let me use a syntax called as id. id Ironman. Now, if you see, it is showing what is the ID of this user, what is the group ID. So I didn't create any group, right? Then how this group ID is created? So if we create a user and add to some group, he'll be part of that group. If we don't add to any group, by default, every user has to be there in some or other group. So it will default create one group and add the user to that particular group. Okay. Now you see this user is created. Now, any user that we create, it will store the information in a folder called as slash etc slash passwd. Let us see, we can use a command called as cat to see the contents of the file. Now let us see in this file whether this user Ironman entry is there or not. Let's do a enter. Now if you see here, all the details of this Ironman is stored here. Okay. Now Ironman, what is the group ID? This is the password X. Group ID, ID of the user is 1102. ID of the group is 1103. Okay, first name, last name, all the details that we have given. What is the home directory of this user? This is the home directory of the user. And what's shell he can work with? He can shell work with bin bash. These are the complete details of this particular user called as Ironman. Similarly, we have created another user. This is the information about user Ironman 2. Now let's say I want to delete this user Ironman 2. User del Ironman 2 and enter. Now the user is deleted. Now let's see this file and check whether the user details are not there or not. Now you see that user Ironman is deleted from here. That is how we can either create users or add users. Now the next one is that we have to create a group. How to create a group? Very simple. Group add and give a name to the group. Let's say I want to give the name of the group as a new group. Okay. So the syntax is very simple. Group add, new group. Okay. Now this is created. Now this group information which we will be there in which folder? Cat. All the configuration will be there in etc, right? Slash etc slash group. So users information will be there in a folder called as passwd. Group information will be there in a file called as group. Enter. Now if you see, I have created a new group, right? This group is there here. Okay. We created a user by name Ironman. Ironman is there and he belongs to group called as 1103. New user belongs to group called as 1104. Okay. Now if I have to delete the group, groupdel new group, enter. You see that group is deleted. Okay. Now till now we discussed about add user, userdel, groupadd, groupdel. We understood about slash etc slash passwd file. We understood about slash etc slash group. There is another file called as slash etc slash shadow. Now if you see here shadow, what is this information which is there here? So this is nothing but your password which is there in an encrypted manner. You see this? This is nothing but your password. This is there in a encrypted manner. So what is the use of this shadow? So this use of this shadow file is there. It stores all your password in a encrypted fashion. Okay. So you see this 999999. This is nothing but how long your password should be there. If I want my password to be expired in a month, I should change that. Okay. This is what this file will have. What is this file? Slash etc slash password. We discussed about three files now. One is called as slash etc slash passwd. It stores all the user information. Second is slash etc slash group. It stores all the group information. Third is slash etc slash shadow. It stores all the passwords in the encryption manner. Okay. Now let us use the syntax usermod. We know the syntax usermod is to change the some of the configuration for the user. Now let us say, let's go to this file cat slash etc slash passwd. Now you see the user Iron Man. What is his default folder? Home folder is called as slash home slash Iron Man. Now let us say I want to change that. How can I change? I can use the syntax usermod hyphen d hyphen d. It's a flag to specify a new home directory for the user. Okay. And let's say slash home slash new home directory. That means I want to change this slash home to Iron Man to slash home to new home. Okay. And what should, for which user I want to change this? I want to change this to the user Iron Man. Okay. User mod hyphen D. I want the Iron Man to have this path as the home directory for the user Iron Man, and then run this. Okay. Now let me use this cat slash password. Now if you see, what is the home directory for this user now? This new home is the new directory for this user called as Iron Man. That is how you can use this particular syntax called as user mod to change the configuration for the users. All right. I mean, not only the user, if you want to change the bash or whatever other details that you want to change, right? It is very simply user mod. Mod stands for modify. Okay. By using this user mod, you can change the current configuration of the user. Now let me switch to my presentation. Okay. This is what we have discussed: adduser, userdel, groupadd, groupdel, user mod. And then we understood about this three files: slash etc slash psswd slash etc slash shadow slash etc slash group. Okay. Now, how can I switch from one user to another user? Now, let's say I'm in root user. How can I switch to user by name Iron Man? Or how can I switch back to another users like a root user? Okay. We have something called as SU. SU means switch user, and you have to give a username. Okay. It invokes a login shell after switching the user. A login shell resets most environmental variables, providing a clean base. Let us go ahead and see how to switch from one user to another user. Now let me clear this. Okay, now I logged in as which user? Who am I? I'm a root user now. Okay, I want to change to Iron Man. SU Iron Man. Now which user I have logged in? I logged in as a Iron Man. Now why it has not asked any password to me? The reason, a root user can log into any users. Okay. Now I logged in as a Iron Man, right? Now let's say SU, to go back to the root user, it would be sudo su. You see, now it is asking me for password. Okay. Password for Iron Man. Enter. Okay. Now I logged in. So now this Iron Man is not part of a file called as sudo users file. So he'll not be able to switch. Okay. Now let's say switch to another user called as Ubuntu. What is the sudo words file? We'll discuss that later. We have another user called as Ubuntu, right? I want to switch to user Ubuntu. And you see it is asking for the password. Okay. But we created the Ubuntu user with a passwordless entry. Okay. Let's do one thing. Okay, now I'm the root user. Let me go to sudo switch user Ubuntu. Okay, now I'm there in Ubuntu. Now from here, I want to switch to Iron Man. SU Iron Man. It will ask for password. Now you see, I switched to user called as Iron Man. Okay, so that is how you can switch from one user to another user by using a syntax called as SU. All right. So that's all I have for this session. We have understood about add user, add group, add, delete user, deleting group, and we understood about user mod, and file slash etc slash shadow slash etc slash passwd slash etc slash group, and we understood how to switch from one user to another user by using su. Thank you for joining session, guys. See you guys in the next class.